Welcome to Your Schools on Community 7 Television. I'm Veis and I'm your host. Each month we look at a different aspect of what's going on in Billings Public Schools. And this month we got a great show for you. We have Ann Brucker with us. Ann is an online instructor for Billings Public Schools. So Ann, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get into the ins and outs of online instruction and all that good stuff. Before we do that, let's get into a little background about you. Did you grow up in the area? Did you come to the area? Tell us some history.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Okay.
I went to college my first year in Laramie and realized that Laramie is a horrible place to live as a teenager. It's windy and it's cold, but I had to go there because I had to meet my husband. So we decided swiftly after that year that we didn't like it, and he grew up in Gillette, so we wanted to live somewhere that was close-ish to home that we could maybe get to on a weekend but not be at home. So we drove to Billings on spring break that year and fell in love with it and moved here when we were 19, and we've been here ever since. So.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
And give us some background in education. This isn't your first year of teaching. So how did you get in? How did you decide this is something I want to do? And then give us some of your history and background of what you've done in education.
Yeah, I taught 4th and 5th grade. I actually started a little bit later in my career because I had a child young. I was 26 when I started. That was back in 2000, and I taught 4th and 5th grade, a 4-5 combo my first year. So I've always been like, take on a little bit of a challenge. I did that 4th and 5th grade for years. I was a math coach at Ponderosa for a little while in there. And then I moved to Burlington for 5 years, where after that I came and started working for the district. So I was a technology integration specialist where I travel all over town and kind of helped other teachers learn to integrate the technology that they had in their room, because that was when the elementary levy passed. So people had all these great things but didn't really know how to integrate them with their curriculum, and the pedagogy that goes behind that was a little tricky. So I did that for almost 5 years, and in the middle of that 5th year, I got contacted by a company called Breakout EDU, who asked if I would want to come and work for them. And they're a private company who designs escape room game experiences for classrooms. Yeah. So I did that for almost 3 years, and then this year hit, and I had this kind of middle of the night epiphany where I knew, like, I need to go back. So I actually started this year, in the school year, late. Without a license, actually. I had to get my license renewed to do this.
We won't tell anyone.
No, it's all fixed now. Yeah.
Yeah. So you came back to do that. Was it specifically to work in an online setting, or just to get in the back in the classroom any way that you could?
Oh no, not the latter for sure. I truly thought that I was finished teaching. I loved my job at Breakout, but because I was working at home and my husband had been working at home through the pandemic, we had my son, who's a sophomore in high school this year, do remote learning because we were there, and we just thought it seemed like a good fit. And when he started in the fall, there weren't enough teachers to cover his classes. And I found myself frustrated because he just didn't have this class and he just didn't have that class, and they were scurrying to find people, and caught myself complaining a few too many times, and was just really kind of frustrated that not at anyone, but just that this was the situation we were finding ourselves in. And I hadn't been sleeping, and I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and it was just like that scene in the movie where the camera focuses in on the character, and it's like, it hit me. I can complain about this all I want, or I can help. Sure. And so I called Becky the next day. It was on a weekend. I called Becky Carlson and I said, hey, I'm asking for a friend. Would you happen to have, I didn't think that I wanted to do elementary. I've been away for so long that I knew I needed a little bit of a shakeup, and I've always been interested in English, especially like vocabulary and stuff. But I also have a math background. So I said, do you have anything like English, maybe middle school level open? And she just was so thrilled to hear from me, because it's now end of September. Yeah. So we rushed it through. I got to do an interview, and I told them I'd promised I'd get my teaching certificate renewed and everything, and they had me start. So I actually have never taught 8th grade before, but ended up taking on 4 periods of pre-algebra and 2 sections of English for 8th grade.
Okay.
So
this is the position of online instructor is somewhat of a new position. Although I would say that last spring, all of the teachers in School District 2 got to experience what it is to be an online instructor. However, when you started, that was the job from day one. Yes. So talk to us a little bit about coming into it knowing not that I'm going to come into the classroom and then come out, but I'm starting in an online environment, and how much different is that than okay, I can be in the classroom for the first 6 weeks and then we're out, or the first month, or whatever that might be.
Yeah, I guess I consider myself lucky that I have a little different perspective on that, because last spring I was still working for an outside company. My son, however, was learning online, and I just watched him struggle because, one, the social aspect of it. He goes to a huge high school and surrounded by kids all the time, and suddenly to not be allowed to be around anybody was huge. And then there was just so much confusion in how to deliver that instruction that I saw all my teacher friends struggling with how to best do that and what to use, and then see it from the student end with my son struggling, and he started falling behind and more behind and more behind, and there were rumors going around about things not being graded anymore and things still counting, and then if you didn't get your work done, you wouldn't be able to participate in sports in the fall, and he's a cross-country runner. It was just like this snowball of stress that everyone was experiencing that I was kind of seeing as an outsider. I can say that I have friends who I have never seen work so hard in their lives because they wanted to still make sure that their kids were learning and make sure that they didn't end up losing and having a big gap in knowledge and understanding throughout the spring, because we didn't know at that time what the fall would look like. Yeah. I think everybody sort of hoped that we'd be able to go back, but kind of knew that we probably wouldn't. And so to come in with me having had the sort of the outsider's view of what went well and what could have gone better, I guess I felt like I certainly don't know what I'm doing. I've never taught online before, and much less 8th grade, but I can see the things that would have really helped my son as an online learner, and the things that my teacher friends who were succeeding were doing, and kind of be able to implement some of that as I went in fresh.
Talk about some of the things that you are doing that you're seeing that are really successful. These things are really working and the kids are engaged with them. And maybe talk about some of the things that you tried and it didn't go that well.
Well, that's funny. Again, like I said, I've never taught middle school before, but I've raised 2 middle schoolers, and I know that they have a little bit, their brains are a little different than 4th and 5th graders are. There's that level of kind of insecurity and self-consciousness with a lot of them, and so a lot of them don't speak in class. And I'm used to having a really noisy classroom where kids are, up and down and moving around and chatting and talking and, under managed circumstances, but I've never had it where I can't get the kids to talk.
Sure.
And so that's really challenged me to try to think of ways to get them more engaged and to be sure that they don't just show up at the Zoom. A lot of kids opt to not have their cameras on, which is completely fine, but I need to know some way that they're still, engaging with the material and the content, and they won't necessarily talk to each other. So trying to find ways to get them to interact without thinking they're interacting. So yesterday I did a math lesson where they broke into breakout rooms to discuss some questions that we were going to do in a game format. Well, they went into the rooms, and I was popping in from room to room, and they weren't talking to each other. And so the next period, I really feel bad for first period because they're always kind of the guinea pigs for everything. So then second period, I said, okay, I need some volunteers, someone who can get other people to talk, and your job is to get them talking. So I had some kids volunteer, and they went into the breakout rooms, and those kids were just trying really hard to get their classmates to talk. And some of them were successful, some were able to kind of get things out of them, and they came back and they're like, oh, it's so hard when nobody will talk. And I said, welcome to my life every day. So I think it was eye-opening for them to be on the receiving end of that quietness, because when we are such social creatures that, in middle school kids, that they thrive in that environment where they're learning who they are socially, and now they're at home behind a computer. They don't know who they are socially, much less, in their own home in this weird environment. So just trying to really take my experiences that I had as a tech integration specialist. I was so lucky to be able to learn about so many tools that really involve kids in their learning and tie those into the curriculum to make sure that the kids are more engaged, trying to make it fun and safe for them to feel like they can communicate and not be put on the spot and that kind of thing. That's worked really well. running of the small groups, not so much. But the other thing is just letting the kids know that their voices are heard, that, I try to communicate with them all the time through emails or whatever, just to let them know, like, I'm really a person and I really actually care about you, person. So I know that one of the biggest things, because I asked them, that they're missing is the social aspect. Where on the other side, some of the kids have never been happier because they didn't love the social aspect of school, and being able to learn like this at home has been so great for them.
Sure. Let's touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in your classroom from your students? I'm guessing you're seeing some that are doing very well, some who are and some who are not doing so well. Describe that, I guess, in more detail and why you think that might be.
Yeah, that's a great question. Why? I wish I knew why. Some of the kids that I think are doing well are, one, kids who just do school well. They're direction followers, they're listeners, they like to please. There's always those kids, and they will always succeed no matter where they are.
Right.
And when I asked my students, one of them was like, I just want to go back to school. I'll get the same grades no matter where I am. They know that. They get how to do these things. Other kids specifically said, I love this so much because I feel like for the first time I can just be myself and not have to worry about being bullied or being isolated in school. So I think those kids are really thriving. Some kids struggle with the content. It's pre-algebra. In 8th grade English, it's hard content. Just because we meet only a couple days a week for longer chunks doesn't mean that it's not still complicated stuff. So some kids just struggle with the content anyway. And then there's kids that it's really hard to kind of take attendance, because what does that mean in a remote environment? They can arrive at the Zoom meeting. I have regular Zooms say first period, every Monday and Thursday at 8 o'clock we meet, which is asking a lot for a middle schooler at home to get up and show up at school online at 8 o'clock. So the fact that any of them do is, I think, fantastic.
Sure.
So lots of encouragement there, but they can come to the Zoom. If they don't engage and participate, were they really there? And on the flip side of that, I have kids who never come to the Zoom at all, but they're still doing work. So just kind of gauging what their output is and the kind of feedback that I'm getting from them by my questioning, whether it's in the chat or through email or through the assignments that we're doing. And then there's some kids that I've never seen ever. They've never turned anything in. I'm not even sure if they know they're in class. So I know as a district, they're working to try to find those kids and make sure, are they still around? Are they homeschooling? What happened there? So, it kind of runs the gamut, as you said, with everything from there to there.
What is a typical day, typical week like in your classroom? What are you guys, what are you doing, and what is your class doing over the course of the day?
Yeah, good question. I feel like I'm really lucky because I teach 2 core classes, and so my schedule is really consistent. It's the elective teachers and kids that I feel very bad for, because it would be so confusing for me. So mine is luckily very structured, and we can keep it really regular. I have first, second, third period on Mondays and Thursdays. They're 2-hour blocks. So we meet for about the first 30 minutes to an hour. We were really encouraged to keep it short, but if the kids are willing to engage with a human for a full hour, I'll keep them on that long. And most of them are great. We still are able to engage with a lot of our own personalities, the kids and I both. So we stay on and we do the lesson. I try to make everything available online, really explicit instructions, making sure that the information and the resources that they're going to need are all there, assuming that they're going to be doing it asynchronously or without attending, but that those resources are there, whether they need them or after class, you know. So we do meet for that first half an hour to an hour, and then I give them the rest of the time to work. And most of them do. We do have some things where we can check and make sure the kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Wednesdays, though, they also have to get caught up on work and make things up. So if a kid decides to get off and go take a nap, I don't know that. I trust that they'll get their work done. So I think it's put a lot of responsibility on all of us to be accountable for what we're doing during the school day.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2-hour chunks. So those first 2 hours are dedicated to math. Second, for me, 2 hours to math. Kids go somewhere else. And then I always end my days with English, and that repeats on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Wednesdays is really nice because we have the whole morning to book times with kids and parents. So if a kid really was struggling with something in pre-algebra, we can have a one-on-one meeting or a small group meeting. And that's not something you can really even easily do in a classroom.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so that's been so wonderful. I've gotten to talk with lots of parents who they want to help, and they're not really sure how. And maybe their kids are telling them one thing and they're seeing another, that kind of thing. So those Wednesday times for the mornings have been great. And then we get lots of professional development opportunities in the afternoon, as well as meeting with our groups of peers, you know, colleagues that we don't really have teaching partners like we've known in buildings before. So being able to meet with the other 8th grade math teachers or English teachers and find out where they are and what they were doing and what's worked, and kind of really digging into the data of how well our kids are doing and how can we support each other.
Sure.
So it's, you know, it's different, but it's been very, I feel like maybe more of a team actually than, and I don't know if that's a middle school thing because I'm focusing in more on one subject, but you know, elementary school, you're kind of doing a little bit of everything. So I really am enjoying this, focusing in on one or two things instead.
What kind of technologies are you using in your classroom?
Great question. That's a really great question because I don't know. I know for myself, I have a computer, a laptop that I did get myself an extra monitor, and I actually have another one, so I look really nerdy.
Well, just so you know, the official, I think, a number of monitors needed in any engineer's office is 5. So you're
so I'm too short.
You're on the low end. You're on the low end.
Christmas is coming. I really don't know how somebody could do it without more than one, because you've got your content here and your kids are here, and then your attendance screen over here. It's a lot to juggle, and I'm really thankful that I'm comfortable with that. But so I have a computer with a bunch of extra monitors. I do have an iPad that I have of my own that I use to, like, when I'm taking notes or drawing something visual, because drawing with a mouse on a laptop is really hard. Unfortunately, the kids, not unfortunately, it is very fortunate, but the kids have Chromebooks. And the reason I say unfortunately is I know that there's some tools in Zoom that I was able to use in my previous job that are available like on a laptop, on a Mac or a PC, say, where the kids can annotate on the screen or can take over control of your mouse. So if I were running something that I wanted to have a kid demonstrate, I could give control over to the mouse, and it's not available on a Chromebook.
Now, are they required to use that Chromebook, or you know, hey, I've got a nice uncle and he gave me this great computer and that's what I want to use. Am I allowed to do that or not?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that question. I think, I know the district provided a device to every student. I know that we have monitoring software that's tied to that device. If a kid, my own son, for example, I'll throw myself under the bus, I guess. He can see better on his Mac screen, so he oftentimes uses his own computer because he's got more, square footage on that, square inchage on that monitor, and then additional controls that he doesn't have on his Chromebook. The other thing that I find is some of the kids, those Chromebooks and those devices came from all over the district and are of all ages. So some of them, their microphones don't work or their cameras don't work. So if they were able to get their hands on a device that did do the job, I feel like more power to them, acknowledging that takes away the district's ability to monitor and supervise. So there is some risk, I think, there with that. I don't know how we get around that for sure, but I mean, I know that is a concern.
What kind of software platforms are you using during the course of the day?
I try to do everything web-based, everything that I can access online so that the kids can access it as well. We use things like Nearpod, which is a kind of presentation software that's got lots of interactivity. Pear Deck, kind of a similar thing. Breakout EDU, so I'm still able to use the escape room style games in my classes. We have used, gosh, there's Kahoot, there's Quizlet, there's quizzes, there's Quizalize, there's Gimkit. There's just lots and lots of delivery mechanisms to get content to kids, whether you want to do it in kind of a gamey format or in just more of a interactive format, depending on what we're teaching. And then our both for English and math, we have online software that is actually pretty robust. And so we're able to use some of the tools out of there. I just try to mix it up so that, you know, one of the things that the kids would say is just so boring. To try to keep it fresh and new and something different all the time. So.
What is one thing you wish your students knew or did better at in online learning?
Engaging, for sure. At least, you know, being willing to talk. I think at middle school, only speaking for the two that I've created, which is really weird that they're quiet because they must have gotten that from me. They just are so self-conscious. Everybody's so worried about themselves. Like they're not worried about you. If I could just somehow put that into their brains that they don't need to worry about what everybody else thinks. We need to learn with each other, especially in this setting. I wish that I could somehow impart to them that not to worry. You're in a safe space. We're all learning together here, and it's okay if you talk. You don't have to turn your camera on, but at least be willing to say something. That would be great because selfishly, it's lonely to talk to thin air and hope that somebody's out there listening. So.
Have you been able to find any cracks in it? Because I know, I mean, I have no doubt what you're saying about those kids not, you know, wanting to do that. But at the same time, you always hear about, you know, they live on their devices. That's how they talk to. They don't even make phone calls anymore. This is the world that they live in. Do you have a sense for how to get across that divide? Because it is a world that they do live in, but maybe because they don't talk on the phone, they're not going to talk on a Zoom either.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're really, when they do interact through the chat, it's lots of abbreviated language, which I am fine with that. When we're writing something more formal for English, obviously I want better English, but when they're just responding to an answer, if that's what I can get out of you, that's great. But part of what you ask is part of why I was willing to sign on to do this. I don't know. And if we can figure that out, because we know that there are those kids that will thrive in this environment, even after this is over, if some way we can figure out how to do this and do this well, those kids need that to happen. And so for us to be willing to, and for their parents to be willing, or families to be willing to let them kind of experiment a little bit with us to figure that out. If we can get that right, it'll be so great, so great.
Absolutely. I know you talked to your kids a little bit about what you should say. What did they have to say about online learning and how it's going this year?
Yeah, it ranged from everything from it's so fun and I love it so much, and I've never been happier in school, as I said, to it's terrible and I highly don't, or what did she say? It's terrible and I don't recommend, highly, but whatever the opposite of recommended. Everything from there to there. I got a couple, you know, high quality 8th grade English. I'm very proud of them. Paragraphs about the pros and cons. One of the things that they did mention a lot was the technology itself and how, you know, I might have great internet because I'm called Spectrum to upgrade so that I could have, you know, a higher speed or whatever. We can't assume that the kids all have that kind of access. So a lot of times when they do try to unmute their microphone and speak, I can't hear it or understand it because it's, so a lot of them mentioned that the technology part is frustrating for them. It's not the school necessarily work, it's that piece that's frustrating. Unfortunately, I don't have a fix for that, but I think again it's an issue of equity that we just need to realize is really a thing, just like in real school, you know. But for the most part, they were recognizing the fact that they knew that this was based on their family's decision for the best, and they were going to try to make the best of it. Here's the pros, here's the cons. Overall, I mean, it was every answer you could imagine a middle schooler saying.
Yes, absolutely. What is one thing you wish parents knew about online learning?
Oh gosh, parents and everyone. It's definitely harder than you'd think. I went in with these ideas of all these fun things that I wanted to do and really focus in on vocabulary and do these fun math like equations for my project. There's just not time.
Yeah.
If I can barely engage them for 30 minutes to an hour in an online setting about school that some of them are already reluctant about, there just isn't really time to do those extra things, or I haven't figured out how to make the time yet.
Sure.
So just to be patient as we all learn and figure this out. None of us has done this perfectly before, and so we are doing a bit of an experiment, and we're trying to cover a year's worth of content plus some of the things that they missed to the best of our ability, and so we can use as much support from home as possible, as making sure that the kids have a quiet place to work and aren't interrupted or being asked to go take out the garbage in the middle of a math lesson, that kind of thing. It still really is school.
Yeah.
It's different school, but it's still an opportunity to learn in maybe a way that your kid will be better for forever.
Sure.
So I think that would be something that I would love for not just parents, but everyone to know. Like when people think, oh, teaching online would be easy. No. And neither is learning online,
Right.
For some of those kids. So.
Sure, absolutely. What is one thing you would like to make sure you get accomplished during the course of this school? You only get to pick one.
There's so many things. Like I said, I would really like to feel like I've got a couple great strategies for how to deliver high quality, engaging content in an online environment, because we've known for years and years, since I was in college back in the late 90s, that the way we do education is the same way that the farmers did it back in the 1800s, and that's not the society we live in anymore.
Yeah.
So that if nothing else can prove to be somewhat of an opportunity to explore some of those alternative methods, because we know that there's different things that kids need. A teenage brain should be able to sleep until 10. If they could start their day at 10 and go till 6 online or partly online, if we could just figure out a couple things that work really, really well, then I'll feel like, yes, that's awesome.
That's very good. Well, Ann, thank you so much for coming down here and visiting with us about your experience and how it's going. And it was an absolute great episode. Thank you for stepping up, becoming a teacher. I know it's not an easy thing to do, so thank you for all that you do for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.